So this is just after 1 minute past 1100 hours GMT on Tuesday, the 17th of January 2023. This is the edition that is part of the broadcast that will be marking 17 years since Sunday, the 22nd of January 2006, when the Khoodeelaar rally was held at the Brady Center in the Hanbury Street off Brick Lane, defending the community against the UK central government attacks on the Brick Lane area and on the east end of London. The attacks by the central government in the form of the Crossrail hole plotted to be dug in the middle of Brick Lane was supported by all the mainstream media. The government was supported by all the mainstream media, including by The Guardian, and of course by the local Tower Hamlets Council, which was supposed to be representing the community in the east end of London. So we mobilized the opposition to all these attackers and we defeated them. We defeated them over campaign starting in December 2003 and ending just before 2010. And that meant that the Brick Lane as a community is still in existence. Brick Lane would have collapsed. And Brick Lane being the front line of the UK Bangladeshis internationally. If the Brick Lane community was attacked successfully by the government as it planned, then there would be no Bangladeshi front line anywhere in the world outside of Bangladesh. And Bangladesh internally being devoid of democratic accountability, there would be no place to identify as Bangladeshi origin community. The Brick Lane based Bangladeshi community and the rest of the Bangladeshi based Bangladeshi origin community in the rest of the world, rest of the UK, is independent, absolutely independent of the party political and other corruption that goes on in Bangladesh. Of course, in Brick Lane itself, because we defended the community against the government, many of the politicos and petty careerists took advantage of the fact that we established a confident identity of the community in a racist society, defying racism, prejudice, hostility, and the hostile environment, etc., that has been in existence, in operation for decades. Of course, the community mobilization by the Khoodeelaar campaign in 2003, community mobilization 2003 took place on the 30th anniversary, let's say. 30th anniversary of the mobilization that I organized in 1973. In December 1973, to refute and rebut and reject the attack mounted by the Sunday Times with the piece bylined by the racist, anti-Muslim, anti-Siloti evilness called Leslie Garner. So 30 years Since the 73 attack by the Sunday Times, we mobilized in December 2003 against the attacks by the UK central government, and we eventually prevailed and defeated the attacks. Now, the attacks were various, multifarious, and mainstream. We had no specific resources of our own to foil the campaign, the attacks, except the moral, ethical, international objective rights and entitlements and the determination to defend the community. So 30 years previously, we defended the community against the Sunday Times attack and malicious discrediting of the Sylheti speaking community in Tower Hamlets in Brick Lane. And in between the 73 Sunday Times attacks, the same campaign, same Muhammad Haque organizing the defense of the community against the BBC, which mounted a 4-part series of attacks on the community in 1986. It was again aimed at the Sylheti speaking Bangladeshis in Tower Hamlets, and the base being the Bangladeshi community based in Tower Hamlets in Brick Lane, from where all the political, social, ethical, and moral kind of inspiration and symbols, identifiers, assertions sprang. And we could only do that by maintaining the vigilant rejection of the attack by the BBC and the other media. In between, and the BBC mounted the 4-part attack in the form of a series called King of the Ghetto. Now, the King of the Ghetto was a completely stupid, racist conception. It was the product of a number of Indians. Now, why would a number of Indians, any Indians, get involved in attacking the Bangladeshis? And the Bangladeshis, the King of the Ghetto, this was aired in May 1986. This was like 5 years after the visit to Brick Lane area by then President Ziaur Rahman. And that visit was again orchestrated. The actual presentation, the actual visit, was orchestrated and organized by myself, working in a way that enabled the visit of Ziaur Rahman to the East End to become more prominent and more central than it would otherwise have been. And in his speech given in the middle of Brick Lane in a park, Ziaur Rahman held up the street sign of Brick Lane to celebrate Brick Lane, and he promised, as President of Bangladesh, not as a party political person, but as a president, that is how we treated him, that he would name a street in Dhaka in Bangladesh and call it Brick Lane. That sealed the symbolic recognition of Brick Lane by the Bangladesh government regime. So all of these, taken individually, might not be as meaningful as they are and they would be when taken together. So if we start from the December 1973 attack by the Sunday Times, called The World Beyond the Curtain, and written by Leslie Garner, whoever else took part in the production, and take the attack by the BBC, King of the Ghettos. And then we include the American and UK combined funding to the tunes of millions of pounds of a new attack in the form of the Monica Ali prostitution. That was actually produced the beginning of the century during the first 10 years. So we again repelled Monica Ali's attack and prevented her prostitution book called Brick Lane being filmed on any location in Brick Lane. Although there was some diversion, but essentially we prevailed. So to defend the community in the east end of London, defend the Brick Lane base has been a full-time occupation, in addition to other things, defending other values and aspects, etc. And as a result of this thread of consolidated, consistent, clear defiance of racism, imperialism, colonialism, anti-Siloti, anti-Muslim attacks, the likes of Lutfur Rahman, who is again incumbent in the post of the corrupt post of the mayor at the expense of Tower Hamlets, took full advantage, and others who tried to do the same thing were calling the Boishaki Mela. These were diversions because the Boishaki Mela was a degenerate attempt at the beginning, and it collapsed as a degenerate distortion of the Bangladeshi community. It was named after the Bangladeshi community, Boishaki Mela, but it was degenerate effect because there was nothing, despite the fact that the channel slave called Channel S commercially profiteered by making a deal with the organizers of the Boishaki Mela and did the unique exclusive broadcast to the Siloti speaking community. There was no Bangladeshi content, absolutely no Bangladeshi content from any of the broadcasts, in any of the broadcasts that took place once a year. We shall talk about the degeneration by and via the Boishaki Mela, because after it collapsed, it never appeared again in relation to the defense of the community. Those who opposed the Boishaki Mela and those who promoted it did so from both sides for very personal profiteering reasons. And I shall come to that another time about the event that took place in September 2012, where somebody approached me as part of the presentation of a kind of question or a representation to a full council meeting in Hrs Council. Now, the draft that was sent to me, the draft that was shown to me was written in English, but it was worse than I had ever seen any draft. It was not just grammatically corrupt and stupid, it was in terms of a narrative, in terms of the thesis, in terms of the ethos. and the identity of the Bangladeshi community. It was absolutely disgraceful. So I had to correct it, give it an identity, give it a narrative, and give it a shape. The person who actually presented this, that was 13 years ago. The person, 11 years ago, I think, yes, 12. So it's 11 years ago. The person who eventually presented that to the council, 11 years later, they would not be able to read a script again, even if they had read it then. They cannot do that. So this individual was used to mount an attack on the community's campaign fronted by me in 2012. And that involved a laptop computer. The laptop computer and various witnesses, all of those are part of the evidence of the damage done by the corrupt regime fronted by the corrupt Lutfur Rahman and his corrupt colluders. So all of those would be contained in a series of evidential presentation of this program, Khoodeelaar television channel, say about 5 to 10 parts. We shall do that in due course. Suffice to say that no presentation anywhere in the United Kingdom of the Bangladeshi community in the UK based in and defined from Brick Lane over the last more than 100 years. No presentation has taken place, no representation has taken place telling the truth in an international way, except those presentations, those representations that have been done by me and via the various actions and campaigns that I organized. For example, the attack on Ismat Ali and Watir Ali in July 1989 in the Flower and Dean Walk, which runs parallel to Brick Lane. There was a demonstration. The attack took place on the 9th of July 1989, and there was a demonstration from the Altavali Park towards Bethnal Green police station in the Bethnal Green Road on 15th of July 1989. But by the time the demonstration, which was a few hundred people, reached the Bethnal Green Road and approached the Bethnal Green police station in the Bethnal Green Road, the so-called organizers, the so-called leaders, physically disappeared. Why? Because the police started to interfere with the peaceful marchers and they started to pick people up and they started arresting individuals from the march that was peacefully progressing. So again, I had to take the decision on the spot. And I decided that instead of letting the police do what they were doing, we shall block the road. We shall block the Bethnal Green Road to traffic. And we sat down. And as I organized and directed the participants, there was a sit down lasting anything up to an hour or so. Now, that was followed by the police arresting about 40 people, mostly Bangladeshis, mostly aged under 40. And that led to a 3-year campaign, legal campaign through the courts by me alone organizing the defense and outside the courts organizing the demonstrations. These are the facts. None of the so called leaders that are listed by bogus organizations, bogus platforms, saying that they are doing the Bangladeshi community in the UK any favors at all. They are absolutely absent. So, this campaign to stop the Crossrail hole being dug in Brick Lane had a remarkable two rallies. One was in October 2004, and the other one was January 2006. In between, we had dozens of street events. But that second rally, which took place in the Brady Center on the 22nd of January 2006, was the bigger, by far the biggest one. And there were thousands of people who turned up from all over the UK and some from the European countries to attend. But the security reasons was cited by the people who control the access to the Brady Center. And by citing that, they stopped people attending. Otherwise, there would be tens of thousands of people. But as the picture shows, there were already, the Brady Center was packed. And there is the picture that we have tweeted today, which shows me speaking in front of the people. Now, that event again was subject to the manipulation by the Town Council, which was being led at that time by Michael Crook. Effectively, Michael Crook, also known as Professor Michael Keith. Now, Michael Crook, had the support of all the Bangladeshi community leaders who say that they're leaders, but they're mental slaves. They're all Mirzafars. They played the role of Mirzafars, and the plot was that they would sabotage that rally. And they would pass that rally not as a Khoodeelaar rally, but as a rally that they had organized with their own initiatives. The idea behind that was that they would then pass a resolution supporting Tower Hamlets Council collusion with the Crossrail whole plot. To cut it short, we prevailed and we demanded that the Khoodeelaar banner be put behind the actual stage, which was done. And it was when I came to speak and give the de facto keynote speech did the rally become a reality. Later, people said that if I had ordered any of the participants to physically attack the councillors and Michael Crook present there, people would happily beat them up. And I said later that I had never ever political campaigns, any of the campaigns. So that was another one. The attack on Quddus Ali that took place in the first week of September 1993 was again only noted by the BBC, broadcasting me starting from 6 o'clock in the morning on BBC radio and BBC television. As soon as they started broadcasting that, it became a national event. So much so that the racist criminals posing as left wingers, SWP wonkers, were contacted by Ken Lying Still Livingstone's mental slave, Kumar More Shit. And they wanted to hijack the whole thing. Again, we shall do the review of the resistance against the racist attack on Quddus Ali in due course another time. Now, this is the general summary of the introduction to the defense of the community. And now today's newspapers, today meaning Tuesday, the 17th of January 2023. Today's newspapers, mainly the tabloids, for example, the Murdoch Scum. Is it showing? Is it showing? It doesn't show the real kind of image. But this is the part of the scum, and it says, it reads monster of the mat. It shows this man, David the Bastard Carrick. David Carrick, 48, he boasted that he is called the bastard, Dave the Bastard. So he's the monster of the mat. And then the Times has got a smaller front page reference to the event. It says police missed 9 chances to stop serial rapist in Met. Now think about that. Rape, by anyone's definition, is a very serious crime. How is it that the Metropolitan Police in London, which is praised internationally, even probably including Imran Khan in Pakistan, who seems to have an inflated idea about the competence and the integrity and the morality of the British state agencies. The Metropolitan Police, London Police, is touted and promoted as a highly efficient police organization. Is that so? If that is the case, then that is not what the Times is admitting it is. It says in the headline, police missed 9 chances to stop serial rapist in the Met. I mean, it doesn't make the headline biting, does it? It's written by Fiona Hamilton, crime and security editor, and David Wood with an E at the end, crime correspondent. Now let's read the first few paragraphs. The Metropolitan Police was plunged into further crisis last night. It was never last night, it was yesterday. But the newspapers never say yesterday, they say last night. That's a complete habitual corrupt criminal kind of routine. After a firearms officer who worked in the same unit as Sarah Everard's killer admitted to being one of Britain's worst sex offenders. Sir Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Commissioner, that is Metropolitan Police Commissioner, but they leave out the police, said he was sickened by revelations that the police had missed at least 9 opportunities in 10 years to stop David Carrick, who was repeatedly reported for criminal and predatory behavior against women. Carrick, 48, who was nicknamed Bastard Dave by colleagues, carried out sex attacks almost continuously during the 2 decades he worked at Scotland Yard. Now, Scotland Yard is another phrase for the Metropolitan Police. Yesterday, he admitted more than 80 offenses, 80 offenses, including 48 against 12 women. Carrick operated with impunity and was allowed to continue working even after he was arrested for rape in July 2021. Day after Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty of Sarah diplomatic protection. The Met said that Carrick and Couzens had worked in different parts of the command. that there was nothing to suggest they knew each other, and our records indicate they were never posted together. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, said that trust in the police was shattered. Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, described Carrick's case as a sobering moment for the Metropolitan Police and the reputation of British policing as a whole, adding, I have been clear that culture and standards in the police need to. So that goes to page 5. Let's see if we can reach there. Predator in Matt ranks who told victims they would be safe with him. So it has got 2 page spread on pages 4 and 5. But page 5 is the one that we are looking at from the page 1. Police missed 9 chances to stop campaign of abuse. The needs to change. That is Suella Braverman being quoted, continued. Carrick had been reported to the Metropolitan Police and 3 other police forces for a range of offences on 9 occasions since 2000, that is 23 years. He was placed on restricted duties in July 2021 when he was arrested by Hertfordshire police on suspicion of rape, but these conditions were lifted when the victim did not want to proceed with the case. Now, that is as not so simple. Why would a victim of rape by police want to report the crime? Why would they want to do that? The answer is they should not want to feel confident enough, safe enough, secure enough to report rape. They are being raped by police. Why? Because the police are, despite all these reports, police are still free to personally contact individual victims and intimidate them. Now, no one who has not experienced personally being intimidated by the police cannot begin to comprehend the depth of horror and sheer fright and terror felt by the individual approached by the police who then intimidate them. And there is nothing in any of the reports today in the papers, including the Times, and there is nothing in the statement by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak or by the Home Secretary Suella Braverman that things will change for the better for the victims, ordinary people seeking and needing and expecting and being entitled to receive protection from the police against other criminals will have any confidence in reporting police criminals to the police. There is a cul-de-sac. There is no point of return. People cannot be expected to feel confident about reporting police crimes. When the police are the criminals, where do they go? And that takes us back to the deadly state of irrelevance represented by the majority of the court system in this country. The court system in the United Kingdom is dysfunctional, is not protecting ordinary people. Contrary to the boast by David Neuberger, who has now been hired by the Hong Kong police after his retirement as the first president of the Supreme Court until 2017. Neuberger boasted at the behest of Theresa May's de facto deputy, David Lidington, who was the so called justice minister at the time, that Brexit would bring about a bonanza, a season of income, golden income, by London courts. When the world's criminals, he didn't say the world's criminals, but that is who he meant. The world's criminal flocked to London and began to do their litigation against one another. As I said before in the previous editions, the ordinary people of London, the ordinary people of England, the ordinary people of the United Kingdom, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall, Scotland, ordinary people don't have anything, anything like the access to the tribunals, to the court system that they are entitled to, they absolutely need. So the British court system, the judiciary, is dysfunctional, is dead for the people of the country. The MPs themselves embroiled, mired in serial corruption and bribery, etc. They cannot be expected to speak up for the people, let alone stand up for them and change the access to justice. There is no justice. Now, with the news today in the I paper that according to sources and according to items that it has seen, Boris Johnson will get away by not being held to account for all his serial breaches of the law. Boris Johnson is a serial lawbreaker. The Metropolitan Police has got hundreds of serial rapists and criminals. The House of Commons has got hundreds of serial criminals and abusers of the process, and lobbyists and recipients of secret funds. And the House of Peers, otherwise known as the House of Good Lords, is as bad. So, where is England going? Where is the UK going? It is going to the pits. It is already in the pits, but it is going to the deeper pits of the pits. When we look at the local councils, where most of the contacts between individual electors and residents take place with the council that has got all the services that are supposed to be being delivered to the local people with public funding, you find that a council like Newham, let's say, council like Tower Hamlets, council like Croydon, Lambeth, Southwark, any local council is beyond the pale. It is completely not accountable. So here is a case. In the context of today's headlines, here is the case of a social worker in the London Borough of Newham who is on record as having lied or made negligent, callous, stupid, ignorant statements to a potential series of thefts being committed. And those potential series of thefts could have been prevented, avoided by the social worker and the social work team listening to the potential victim of these crimes, of the thefts. And this social worker repeatedly said that incidents of theft, current or future or potential, should be reported to the police. Now, he was saying that not randomly, he was saying that specifically, negligently, carelessly, prejudicially against repeated statements made by the reporter, that is the potential target of the thefts, that the police might be contacted or might be contactable, but their being contacted after the thefts was no good. That the thefts should be prevented, which they could have been, but they could not, the police would not and could not restore the stolen properties. All these are contained in written documentary communications sent to this individual social worker who refused to take as evidence the widespread knowledge that has been prevalent in this society for decades, that the police are not doing their job, that the police has become a dead organization as far as doing solving the crimes is concerned. And today's headlines, let's look at them. Now look at this headline in this as a breaking headline on the Sky News website. It's a serial rapist and abuser, David Carrick, dismissed from the Met Police. What's the point? Of course, he has no way but to be dismissed. But what does it do to his victims over 20 years? The victims of his rapes. The Met Commissioner, the current one, Sir Mark Rowley, said the employment of Carrick was a spectacular failure by his force, that is the London Police, adding that the Metropolitan Police Service has been too weak on the issue for some time, that is years. This is an item posted at 11:41, and we are now talking about 11:44. So 3 minutes ago. And it reads, a Metropolitan Police officer who admitted to being a serial rapist has been dismissed from the force following a misconduct hearing. David Carrick was found to be one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders after he pleaded guilty to dozens of rapes and sexual offenses. The 48-year-old attacked at least 12 women over an 18-year period throughout his career at the Met. He was only suspended after being arrested following a second rape complaint in October 2021. The force has apologized to victims after it emerged Carrick had come to the attention of police over 9 incidents, including allegations of rape, domestic violence, and harassment between 2000 and 2021. So that is 21 years. Carrick, who the day before pleaded guilty at the Old Bailey to 49 attacks on women, including 24 rapes, wasn't there and was not represented by a lawyer. Assistant Commissioner Louisa Rolfe ruled that his admissions amounted to gross misconduct and sacked him. She was told Carrick had not responded to the misconduct allegation. Assistant Commissioner Rolfe said, this is a sickening and horrific case with far reaching consequences for policing. I hope never to see its like again. Metropolitan Police lawyer Howell Bennett said Carrick's crimes had a catastrophic effect on his victims and their families, and would damage the reputation of the force. He added, his offenses were heinous, targeted, and deliberate. Policing has taken a step backwards as a result of these convictions. Now, this has to be used to extrapolate, to cover other aspects of policing. If they don't do that, then policing is still dead, despite the fact that they're apologizing, they're expressing sickness, and all the other things. Police is in dysfunction, is really bad state. It is not working, is it? So, if we look at the actual evidence, even the limited reports that have been published by the so called media about the case of this woman in her 70s, Lillian John Baptiste, whose mummified body was found in her home in Canning Town. Canning Town is the same area where the meeting with the United Nations Special Envoy on Poverty and Homelessness or Housing took place on the 12th of November 2018, at which meeting Newham Council's executive mayor, in post for 5 months only at that time, apologized for Newham Council for the behavior of social workers described by a mother at the meeting as having been very cruel and having forced that mother who was starving and was waiting for 20 hours in the cold outside the social worker's office to survive by drinking her baby's milk. So, in the context of the reports covered by Fleet Street today about this David Carrick, the serial rapist, it has to be said that the Times newspaper, the Times newspaper in the 1960s, look at the length of time that was done. Let's the fall of Scotland Yard, I think it was. Now that book, well, it was two reporters, I think, that authored that work. Let's go back to the heading. And it was called The Fall of Scotland Yard. Well, this was actually published in 1977 by Barry Cox. It's a Penguin paperback, August 25th of August 1977. But the actual fall of Scotland Yard, this was the fall of Scotland Yard took place between 1969 and 1972. As a result of what happened in those years, a score of London detectives went to jail. That was in the 1960s, let's say, mainly. So 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, now 60 years ago. And despite the horrible things that were uncovered in those reports, 60 early. So they published this one in the Penguin edition in 1977. And the subheading to the main title is Corruption in London's Police Force. Allowed to get aggravated by serial rapists, serial murderers employed as Metropolitan Police. So when Roxana Fiaz was told about the behavior of the social workers, towards the single mother or the mother with the baby at a meeting held on the 12th of November 2018. What did she do? She did the political opportunist thing, which was to say that, can I apologize for myself and on behalf of Niyam Council? That is what she said. She apologized on behalf of herself and on behalf of Niyam Council. And she said that what had been described by the victim of the Niyam Council social workers should not have happened. Another report published 4 days later by a woman blogging, I think, called Kate Garner, said that Roxana Fia said that in light of what had been disclosed behavior of New Council, a huge change needed to be occurring, brought about by Niyam Council, in the Niyam Council. Now that was 2018. This is 5 calendar years, 6 calendar years since 2018. And the behavior of Niyam Council in brazenly, negligently, callously, carelessly breaking the law, legal obligations, has gotten worse. And Ruxana Fiaz has been sent the details throughout the breaches that have been occurring over the last few years, including this week, including this morning. What happens? It's like the behavior of Croydon Council, let's say. Croydon Council has been reported in Private Eye, especially in Private Eye in the Rottenberg's column, because no other outlet has published, no other UK-wide publication, that is, or organ or media outlet has covered the behavior of Croydon's Labour Controlled Council that was doing corruption business openly, brazenly. And the Labour Party headquarters, regardless of who the leader was, and it was probably Jeremy Corbyn, it doesn't make any difference because Corbyn, as we have said consistently on the evidence of his behavior, is intellectually challenged, cognitively challenged. Even if he were not cognitively challenged, say Starmer, who is the political murderer of the Labour Party, it makes no difference. The Labour Party in centrally is a corrupt outfit. Say in 1990, when I challenged the Labour Party crooks in Tower Hamlets Labour Party, the leader at that time was Neil Kinnock. And I gave Neil Kinnock chapter and verse of the corruption taking place in Tower Hamlets Labour Party. Kinnock fronted Labour Party headquarters completely was in denial or was in complete denial of the evidence that I was bringing forward to him, to the Labour Party. to his attention in several detailed documents that I sent via fax to him. In 1990, I had no access to or even knowledge about the internet. It was yet to come. So I relied on a commercial access I obtained at a nearby pharmacy, chemists, and I paid them hefty amounts of money to make Neil Kinnock aware of the corruption, the scale of corruption, the frequency of the corruption, the depth and spread of corruption in Tamil's Labour Party. Kinnock did not answer. Kinnock did not take any action against the corruption, and nor has any of his successors, including John Smith, who was in post a short time, most certainly not Tony Blair, and most certainly not Gordon the liar, most certainly not Ed Miliband. And most certainly not Jeremy Corbyn, and most certainly not Keir Starmer. These are all Labour Party leader or leader post holders who have supported Labour Party corruption. No exception. So when I found that Kinnock was colluding with the crooks and complicit with the crooks, I had to conclude on the evidence that there was no way that the Labour Party could be relied on to do anything for the ordinary individuals in any borough, in Tower Hamlets or in Croydon or anywhere. Now, in Croydon, hundreds of millions of council money have been stolen by Labour Party councillors and chief executives by using various front outfits. And the coverage in the private eye Rotten Boroughs column has been pathetic. Like in the case of Lutfur Rahman, who has got multiple criminal allegations against him concerning his years between 2010 until 23rd of April 2015, there was no action taken by the Rotten Boroughs column to get the police involved in a meaningful way, or to investigate why the police and the Director of Public Prosecutions were not taking action against Lutfur Rahman or against Croydon Council. And it goes on. So what happens in the corrupt Croydon, what has been happening in the corrupt Lewisham Council, the corrupt Hackney Council, the corrupt Tower Hamlets Council, has been happening in the corrupt Newham Council. So the headlines today, front pages, let's have a look at today's front pages. So the front pages today, the Daily Mail says just how many more monsters are in uniform in the Metropolitan Police. And the Independent says shaming of the Metropolitan Police. Armed police officer is one of Britain's worst serial rapists. I mean, it could read like the proverbial banana republic, Asian republic, Asian country, African country, the so-called Latin American country, South American country. Carrick committed more than 70 sex attacks in 18 years, says the Independent. More than 1,000 police on the Metropolitan Police Force are accused of abuse. So, this is a woman who has written this, is a Home Affairs editor. The Metropolitan Police is facing demands for answers after one of its officers was revealed to be one of Britain's worst serial rapists. David Carrick admitted 49 charges relating to 71 sexual offences, including 24 rapes against 12 women. All the crimes, which included patterns of sadistic and degrading abuse, were committed while he was a serving officer in Britain's largest police force. London Mayor Sadiq Khan said he was sickened by the case, while Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley apologized to Carrick's victims and vowed to reform the Met Police. Now, when Roxana Field apologized to the victim of this Newham social service employees who forced the victim to survive the night while waiting 20 hours in the cold outside the social services by drinking the milk that was meant for her child. She apologized, but has she changed anything? She most certainly has not. There is a brick wall around Roxana Fias, shielding her from demands, objective, ethical, moral demands that she should answer for the corrupt Newham Council, the dysfunctional Newham Council, the cruel Newham Council, the dishonest Newham Council. But she is protected by the brick wall she has erected around herself. We shall be ending this particular edition at 1 hour, 7 minutes, 28 seconds.